This region around the Great Lakes has been called the heartland. When it comes to agriculture, there's hardly an area in the world that compares.
Everybody, just hold on. I don't know what we're going to have here.
That's what brings the viewers back. That a boy.
Manage money, piling in.
Double digits higher.
So at this point, we're in kind of uncharted territory.
There's a lot of money on the sidelines.
So that was a crazy one.
Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, September 2nd, and this is the AgYield War Room. I'm Dan Dempsey, and I'll be moderating today's session. As always, if you got any questions or comments, please feel free to drop us a line in the chat area, and we'll be sure to get to it during the show. Overnight markets here, December corn down 3 1/4 at 417. November soybeans were down 13 1/2 at 1041. And December Chicago wheat was down 9 1/4 at 525. No export sales here this morning. So I guess a couple of news items. We've got interesting meeting taking place this week. President Putin meeting with President Xi of China, and Kim Jong-un also joining that meeting. So pretty interesting to see the headlines, what'll come out of there. No news really from last week's Chinese delegation meeting with the U.S. trade team. It seems as though beans were a little disappointed there overnight with nothing fresh in the way of a trade deal or any sort of progress there that was announced. So I guess with that, Justin, we were talking before the show, and it seems like there's just more and more chatter about some things that, may be affecting the finish here for corn. Maybe touch on that and then share a few thoughts as we start the week.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think it's not an ideal finish, obviously. I think there's lots of talk of rust, and I think not only on social media, but clients that we know and kind of trusted sources, that just not a great finish overall, especially out in the West, where we have really high hopes for yield potential to kind of drag the national yield up to these kind of unprecedented levels. That in a really dry August for soybeans and corn, I guess, finish, but mostly soybeans and the eastern belt, call it Illinois and East. So yeah, not ideal, compared to what the USDA came out with in August, which was really kind of ideal conditions for a lot of areas in the month of July. Just kind of a poor finish, and it's been kind of a trend, I think, the last 4 or 5 years, where we've had super high potential, call it late July, and just have not an ideal finish in a lot of key areas. So still get, really big crops, but maybe it's taking 20, 30 bushels off those, super high end yields. So we'll see. The rust is kind of a new factor. It's obviously it's been around for a while, but I don't think I've ever seen it so widespread so far north. And it seems like it's rushing the crop to maturity. It was already, a lot of crops are already kind of a week or 10 days ahead. It felt like even, before the call it Pro Farmer Tour, and this is even spinning it along. So what does that mean nationally? It's attacking some of these, like I said, Iowa, good parts of Illinois, areas that we're kind of counting on for those big yields. So I think the rally is justified after being extremely sold, kind of pre-first notice day. We've had a good 25, almost 30-cent rally in corn. Obviously sitting, not too far off of, recent highs in beans, sold off last night, down 13 cents. So yeah, I would put a downward bias on national yields at this level. I think we talked about this last week. Corn's got phenomenal demand right now, and big supply, but supply looks to be getting maybe smaller. Now I think there's a buffer in there, as we talked about also, where we've got massive demand numbers written down. So I think there's some buffer there on the S&D side, or the ending stock side for corn. And beans, the opposite, where no Chinese business on the books. And I think that's just really a strong headwind for beans. It's for one of the drier Augusts we've seen, and such a low acres number. I think beans would be really cooking right now if you had the Chinese business, or these talks that we had last week. If you would have had some announcements We didn't get any of those. So I think beans are kind of, losing business every day to South America, right? That's the fear. And that window gets smaller and smaller every year where, the next soybean crop comes out of South America earlier and earlier. It feels like, where you're talking January, early February, you're already starting to harvest in some part of that massive country. So that's the head one. So it's kind of two different tales here, in my opinion. Now not to get too long-winded here, but if the corn yield's closer to low 180s, or even 180, to me, that changes the entire thought process of the markets, what it means for acres next year, all those kinds of things. So pretty important discovery window here as we start getting into fields and get real data. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Hey, Ben, what's on your mind as we start the week?
Yeah, yield uncertainty, probably the biggest thing right now. I think the September and October numbers and then bookending quarterly stocks will be important to watch. I still go back to, we did plant 97 million acres of corn. The volume is going to be tremendous. We're seeing great business. Beans are missing out on Chinese business, but doing pretty good business everywhere else, which is encouraging. I think markets are going to get a little bit sloppy within a defined range here. I still don't think we're going to run away from anything. But we'll see. There's they're whittling away at that short in corn. As long as we keep doing business, that's encouraging. And I think when you step back and you look at all, if you have a 10,000 foot view of where you sit, it's still not a great place to engage for the farmer. So might leave a little bit more of a void on an offer when people expected it most.
Hey, Ben, just to, I'm not a technician. I like to pretend to be one sometimes when it fits my bias. But if you look at corn, kind of just a trend line, just a basic trend line from, call it those April highs, which we bounced off of 4 or 5 times. We're getting close again to trying to test that. It's like 421-ish. Yep. It looks like, as far as like momentum shift, if the funds decide like, something's changed, it's time to either get flat or go the other way. I think that's a pretty big one if you start trading and closing above that, as far as just a momentum change.
I was looking at that this morning, and if you back it up, you have a pretty nice bullish channel that we've developed off of our lows. Of course, that's short term. You're talking about 3-4 weeks worth of trade, 3 weeks. You get above the 20 and the 50, and then the 100-day comes in. It's interesting. The 50-day came in 17.5. The 100-day sits right near the gap area at 31, and the 200-day is 440. 440 has been really in a big place on the chart for almost 2 years now. So it'd be great to be able to see those levels here sometime in September. So we'll see. We are definitely in the place where I think it's trying to change momentum, but we're going to need some aggressive buyers above the 50-day to solidify that. Otherwise, it's just another pop in a bear market.
Yeah, because if you're trading it as a bear market, this is the area you'd probably take a stab at selling it.
Yes.
Right.
Great.
You'd probably sell it and buy some calls or something if it starts trading above it. But
and then there's a tremendous amount of what you would perceive as classical resistance from like 32 to 35, where we continually made those lows and bounced back all through the spring. So I don't think corn's going to run away from anything right now. Maybe if we get a big yield reduction in September, there's some things out there that could trip it up. So we'll see. I think we're losing yield, but are we losing yield from 189 to 184 or from 184 to 180? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I feel like you're probably going to have buyers on breaks at least until the September report. I think enough people are going to want to see what that number is before they get committed to being aggressively short on the spec side.
Dustin, share a few thoughts here. What's on your mind as we start the week?
Just a big rally in the dollar overnight, and big drop in the real. So currencies are definitely helping to push this thing lower. Outside markets are down a little bit, so I think that's just something to watch. One of the bigger risks, I think, would be, some sort of, big move in the real, like a failed rally here if it starts to fall. That's why, I know insurance is active, but like things like beans are well above, where the likely payout levels are for anyone that's looking at average to above average yields. For corn, this little rally, I think with all the weakness in the spreads, the front end of the market, how the old crop finished out so poorly, knowing that there's a gigantic safrinha crop that still needs to be sold. All that's kind of still in mind, even though I'm getting a lot of, like what we talked about, reports that Iowa die down is really fast this year. There's not really a great sign that we're finishing out well, as Ben mentioned. But just want to remember that it's 97.2 million acres. So if that's for anything above 180, I still think there's a tremendous weight on the market. With all that said, especially if the currency starts to rise, the dollar.
Very good. Well, with that, we'll wrap for this morning. One thing to note, we'll get crop conditions 3 o'clock Central. Those will be out today, and then everything will be pushed today due to yesterday's Labor Day holiday. So weekly export sales will be out on Friday, and we'll take a look at that later in the week. So with that, appreciate everybody that tunes in on a daily basis. If you wouldn't mind, throw us a like and certainly subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything to do so. It'll keep you up to speed on everything that's going on with AgYield. So again, thanks to everybody that supports the show. We're doing this live every day that the markets are open on X, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, 8:15 Central Time. Appreciate the thoughts and comments here this morning, guys. It was a good show. Hope everybody has a good start to the week, and we look forward to talking to you again tomorrow.
The War Room is proudly presented by AgYield. For over 50 years, the AgYield team has provided grain marketing and risk management solutions for growers across the country. Our veteran consultants harness cutting-edge technologies to pinpoint risk, optimize market performance, and protect your farm's profitability. Discover a new approach to farm revenue management at agyield.com.
Hey guys, Jack here. Be sure to support the show by hitting the like button, leaving us a comment, and subscribing to the channel for all the latest updates. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.